What's up, bitches?
Let's talk about crime.
What's up, bitches?
Hello.
Okay, I know this is probably a big topic of conversation right now, but I have to say something about this because I am thoroughly fucking annoyed. And I have been annoyed for a while about it, but I like the solidifying annoyance that I have, and I feel like this is the time to say it. I apologize now, Sierra. We may lose listeners, but I have to say it. I'm just annoyed. Okay. So, the Grammys happened a couple weeks ago. And the whole entire Grammys was literally about celebrities continuing to say, fuck ICE, fuck Donald Trump, all this stuff, right? That I don't give a shit about. I have my own views on how about celebrities, like whatever. What I'm frustrated with is our news, our media, our social medias, and our celebrities. They are all on the train of fuck ICE, fuck the presidency, all this stuff. I haven't heard one of those motherfuckers talk about Jeffrey Epstein. I haven't heard one of those motherfuckers talk about the fact that that list, those fucking emails, the shit that has just recently come out, 3 million documents. Okay. I started looking at them myself. The amount of celebrities that are in these emails, and some of them are people who have said, I've never talked to him. There's literally emails of you back and forth, you fucking liars. Okay, so that pisses me off because you guys are going to stay silent about that. But here's where I get really annoyed. Jeffrey Epstein was a convicted sex offender as of 2008. Okay, he was convicted. He was found with a minor. And this minor did come forward and say things about what was going on. And he was convicted. He spent 18 months in prison, but whatever. We'll just not fucking talk about that. Anybody who was friends or associated with Jeffrey Epstein after 2008, fuck you. Because every single person who has had conversations with Jeffrey Epstein after 2008, you all know that he was a convicted sex offender. So the celebrities out there who are like, I didn't know. The fuck you didn't. And why aren't we focusing on that? Why are we not seeing celebrities be vocal about the people within their fucking circles that are motherfucking pedophiles? Why?
The Illuminati.
It bothers me. And it bothers me because in every other sense of the world, these people, some of the shit they have against these people, I can't figure out why they haven't been arrested yet. The only thing that makes sense is either they are either in cahoots with the people who did the investigation or they've been able to buy their way out of it. But I get so tired of the fake ass celebrities who are like, fuck ICE, fuck America, when that you're talking about it like as if you give a shit, but your best friend who's sitting 2 tables down from you is known as an associate and pedophile of Jeffrey Epstein. Get the fuck out of here. I wanted to make this announcement to let everybody know that at this point, I have felt this way for a long time, but at this point, I hope everybody in our world can take a good hard look at celebrities, specifically Hollywood celebrities, and realize that they are all one and the same, and they are all terrible fucking people, and that they don't actually care about the world, and they definitely don't care about you, me, and the little kids and children and little girls who are being sexually abused. Because if they did, they'd be vocally speaking today about it. And they're not. And our media, our national media, our local media, nobody's talking about it, which is so incredibly insane to me because it has been a big push for how many, before they release the files, that's all you saw. Release the files. Now they've released the files and it's fucking crickets. You fucking hear crickets. Why? Because the shit you wanted to come out wasn't actually there. Because the shit you expected to see wasn't there. And now you're realizing that our government is full of corrupt ass pedophiles. That's a fucking shock to me. Especially because I even saw one where there was a guy who went under oath, testified and said, I did have an affiliation with him. However, He was my neighbor. And I went to his house one time and he had a massage table in the middle of his living room. And I was totally creeped out by that. And I told my wife, like, I will never talk to him again. That's what he said. That's what he said in 2005. Then he was convicted of being a sex offender in 2008. And there are emails back and forth between that same man and Jeffrey Epstein in 2012. So you're a fucking liar. And by the way, he is in our Congress. So if you don't believe me, go look it up. Go find your Congress people. Go search them. If you go to the FBI.gov, Epstein, whatever, they have like a whole page. And then what you do is there's a search bar and you literally type in somebody's name. So if you are somebody who wants to find out all the things about, let's say, Donald Trump, type in Donald Trump, hit search, and it will give you everything that they have released that has Donald Trump either talked about or Donald Trump in emails back and forth, pictures, whatever you're looking for. But if you type in a celebrity and I'm not going to say names because listen, I'm just little old me, but I definitely am not putting a target on my back. But I'm sure if any of you have really done any research, there's a one specific celebrity that has been on the tip of everybody's tongue when it comes to things. And he's a musician. And if you were to type in his fucking name, you're going to find files for him. There are females and males in their files, and not every single thing in there is proof. But what I need people to understand is I'm not saying they're all pedophiles. What I'm saying is anybody who had communications with Jeffrey Epstein after 2008, fuck all of you. I don't care if you're a pedophile or not. You literally associated with a pedophile after he was publicly, by the way, publicly shown to be a pedophile, convicted and sentenced. Everybody knew that he was a pedophile as of 2008. So if you are somebody who had communications with him after that, I don't care if you are guilty of pedophilia, guilty by association, motherfucker. I know right now for myself, if anybody I personally know in my circle ever came out to be a pedophile, it's a one done cutoff. I have nothing to do with you ever. Ever. There is no, I don't even understand how somebody can continue to live that way. And yet here we are, knowing that it wasn't just one person. It was all the elite, rich Hollywood, Congress, and musicians that still continue to talk to somebody. So you go ahead and make your own judgments about that. Anyways, I just had to point that out because I literally was watching a bunch of stuff and I was just like, I'm frustrated by it because I see a lot of people who only want to focus on what's going on in our media right now, which is fine. But there is a whole pedophilia ring that is being exposed and literally nobody is talking about it. Celebrities are only choosing to talk about the immigration stuff, which is a big deal. I'm not discounting that, but why can't we talk about both? Why can't we have celebrities, if they really care, stand up and say like, fuck ICE, but also fuck Epstein and all of his pedophilia friends? Why can't we say that? But you don't see that. And I think it's because there's a very dark ring. My cousin and I have had multiple conversations about this. Him and I were talking about this shit, all the stuff that's coming out right now with Epstein. Him and I talked about it. We talked about the pizza shit. We talked about all that stuff way fucking before this shit became public like that. So I feel vindicated as fuck to know that him and I were talking about this shit way before it became a big thing. But again, why isn't anybody else talking about it? Why isn't anybody else sharing this in the, I don't understand. I want anybody who's part of a pedophilia ring to be arrested. I want, if you are somebody who is part of this Epstein shit and there is evidence that you abused a minor, I want you arrested. And I don't want you just arrested and given 18 months in prison. I want you arrested and put in jail for the rest of your life because that's what you deserve. Period. Full stop. Doesn't matter what you do for a living. Doesn't matter who you are. Your celebrity status doesn't mean shit to me. I could care less about celebrities. I've never cared. I don't care to meet them. And if I do meet them, they're regular ass people. Like I don't have any whatever about it. That's my rant for this morning. And I know that's a weird way to start off the thing, but I've been like trying to figure out how I can get it off my chest. And I was like, oh, I could put it on TikTok. I don't want to. But I thought this is a good time to say it because it's part of like true crime stuff, right? It's something that's going on currently right now. So here we are. Enough of the rant. Anyways, that's not what we're here to talk about. We are actually here to talk about, again, 3 weeks in a row, Sierra comes in with the fucking killer.
Told you it's going to be. Well, and Sierra also bought something for the podcast.
Yeah, a book.
Which was a book at Barnes & Noble's that's unsolved murders.
Murders,
Or
yeah.
unsolved deaths.
Deaths, yeah. So we're gonna definitely, it's making my job easier. But this one, so here's the thing. Sierra sent this to me. I guarantee you she is not gonna even know anything at all about it, because what she sent me,
I don't even know the tiniest little bit
what
of it.
she sent me was actually the fact that, well, actually I'm not gonna say that because I don't want to give anything away. You're not gonna even really understand. And then whatever, you're not gonna understand it. But this came from Sierra sending me something, and I was like, yeah, I'll look into it. And then I was like, yeah, this is okay. And let me tell you, it actually turned out to be a fucking great story. So here we go. Okay, so this week we are talking about a man named Charles Victor Thompson. Now, Charles was born June 13th, 1970, and he was raised pretty much in Texas. However, he did say that he spent about 10 years of his childhood in Colorado. Now, in the 1980s, he also spent some time in the juvenile system. And yes, did not get what he should have. As we know, the juvenile system fails every time. Now, in 1982, he is introduced to drugs by his older brother. So he is 12 years old and he is introduced to drugs. And this leads him to a lifetime of fighting with addiction. Now, by the time he is 18 years old, he's emancipated from jail and he is put on adult parole. So if you think about it, he was in the juvenile system from the age of really maybe 12, 13 years old, all the way till he was like 18. And one of the things that he points out, which I actually agree with, is he said, as an adult looking back, I realized that when I was in jail, they did not, when I was in juvie, they did not do anything to help me with the problem. They would just do like group therapy, and all group therapy was, as he put it, was comparing war stories. They didn't actually put in any rehabilitative services. And he said that. And I agree with that. That is one of my problems with juvenile detention, is that they don't do the rehabilitation part. And in juvie, that's the important part. And I'm not going to say that his crime would not have happened if he had gone through that, but there is a part of me that thinks this crime may not have happened had he gotten early intervention as a child and stopped his drug use, which turns into alcohol abuse and other things. I don't know, but I do know people, when they do drugs and drink a lot, are not the same people that they are when they're not, right? So if they would have handled and helped him do rehabilitation at a young age, maybe he wouldn't have had a life of addiction. So by the time he's 20 years old, he's actually working as a service subcontractor. He's doing air duct cleaning, kind of living his life. Now, in 1995, he ends up leaving this job because during that time, there's new regulations put into the state that you have to have certifications to be able to do these things. And so instead of him doing the certifications or trying to get them, he's like, I'll find some, I'm going to do something else. He is also married and has 2 children at this time. And him and his wife decide, maybe we should move out of Texas and we'll move to Colorado and get a fresh start. He also is using meth at this time and is keeping it a secret from his wife and his family. They have no idea, but he is a heavy drug user at this time. Now, they decide, yeah, let's kind of get our shit together. Let's find a way. Let's get to Colorado. Let's get out of here. However, Charles then starts drinking a lot. Probably also using drugs. He's using drugs. He's drinking. He doesn't have a job, right? So or maybe he has a job, but he has left the job that he'd been doing for so long. He's changing. Their life is changing, and he's doing the thing. He ends up getting a DUI. Now, his words were that the DUI, with this DUI, he ends up losing everything. He lost his job, his house, his wife, his kids. Okay, so after he gets his DUI.
Over a DUI?
Well, my guess would be there's more problems behind it, but my guess is he's had a drinking problem for a while. And the DUI was most likely the icing on the cake. It was kind of probably one of those things where, as his wife anyways, you're fed up because you keep telling him to get help. You keep telling him to stop drinking, and he doesn't. And now he has a DUI and loses his job. Therefore, you can't afford the house. Now you guys have to figure out how you're going to make ends meet. And I think she was just done. And I totally, listen, I get it. I do. Not because I'm an alcoholic and I'm not married to one, but I most definitely have been in a scenario where I've had to cut ties with people. I cut ties with somebody because of their alcoholism because they wouldn't stop drinking. So I understand that concept. So after his wife leaves him, takes the kids. He ends up going to Mazatlan, Mexico for about a year. And he said that he spent the time surfing, drinking, partying, trying to get himself off of meth because he had been on meth and just trying to get his life back in order. And he said it did work. He said, I actually didn't do any meth or anything while I was in Mexico. I literally just drank and partied, but I wasn't on drugs anymore. And I keep saying he said, because I want to tell you guys something. One of my resources for this research, I was having a hard time finding his background information because when you type him, it's just about the murders. And there was a YouTube video of somebody who actually does a lot of these, but they either go to the jails and visit the people and talk to them about like their life and their crime. Or in this scenario, because he was in a high security facility, he wasn't allowed to have visitors. So he wrote him a letter and he wrote a letter back. So this that I'm telling you are straight out of his letter that he wrote. These are actually what he is saying is happening. This is not hearsay. This is his letters of how his life was. So I thought it was kind of cool. I'm not going to lie. Now, by 1996, he was at the lowest of lows. He had basically fallen completely to the bottom depths of the dark, dark sea. And you either fall all the way or you pick yourself back up. And he ends up realizing, I'm going to fix my life. So he ends up getting a job at Subway. He gets a car. He starts saving money. And by June of 1997, he's actually trying to get himself back into a good place. He's working, not drinking that much. He's saving up money to get his own place. And around this time, he meets a woman named Glenda Hayslip. Now, Glenda's an older woman, and he really likes her. And they begin dating, and they basically become inseparable. And for about a year, they have like that fantasy fun relationship where it's just full of fun. You really enjoy your time with that person. However, Charles' drinking becomes a problem again. While he had been doing well, an alcoholic has a daily struggle of trying not to drink, just like a drug addict. If you're clean and sober, it's an everyday struggle to stay sober. There's never a day that goes by if you're an alcoholic or if you're somebody who is on drugs. Even if you're 20 years down the road, you still will have those demons and you will still have those cravings and you have to be able to overcome them. So again, this is like the normal relationship of an alcoholic, really. So he ends up falling back into old habits and starts drinking a lot. Now, Glenda and Charles end up spending most of their nights at bars. They drink together all the time. And his description of it was that they would drink from lunch until bedtime because they would literally meet up for lunch, start drinking and drinking and drinking at the bars, which also, how fucking expensive is that shit for real?
Not only that, but did they not cut people off at the bar in that time?
Well, they probably did. But if you're not looking and acting drunk, and also that's not saying that they stayed at the bar the whole time. They might have started drinking at lunch at the bar and then went home and finished drinking, or just hung out at the bar all day long and you drink over a long period of time. Like people drink like that all the time, like at barbecues. When you go to somebody's house, you just sit back on beers, right? Now their relationship, because of the alcohol problems and because of other issues, which I saw some claims from Glenda's son that Charles was abusive towards her, their relationship falls apart. And Charles ends up moving in with a friend, and then he eventually gets his own place once again. And he starts to, again, get his life on track. It goes relatively okay. He's working, paying his bills. He even would rent out rooms in his home to former coworkers so that he could make ends meet. Like everything seemed to be fine. Well, during this time, he finds out that Glenda has now started dating a new person. And this person is a bartender. And this bartender is somebody that they both knew. And Charles felt deeply betrayed by this, and he was deeply hurt by this. So in turn, he starts to drink even more to cope with how hurt and bothered he is by this. Now, again, these are words specifically from Charles. I found interviews and things from, for instance, Glenda's son, who said that their relationship was violent, that he oftentimes was abusive, and that he was obsessed with her. So I'm telling you what Charles directly said, but I'm also telling you that maybe Charles' view of what happened is different than what other people saw. Now, on April 29th, 1998, police are called to Glenda's apartment, and it was a domestic disturbance call. And it was actually between Charles and Darren Kane, which was Glenda's current boyfriend. Now, when officers showed up to the apartment, Charles and Darren are sitting on the porch drinking a beer. They're not even fighting anymore. They go up and talk to him, and basically it comes out that they had gotten into an argument and they had fought. Now, according to what I saw, Glenda's son said that Darren whipped Charles' ass. Okay. But they had come to peace with whatever the fuck was going on at the time they were drinking a beer. I literally picture it as they go there, they get in a fight, they fist fight, they stop, and they're like, fuck it, let's just share a beer.
Yeah.
That's really how things went, honestly, in the 90s.
I feel like that's how most, I
specifically remember, I'm putting some people on blast here. I specifically remember a situation where my brother was extremely upset when we were teenagers. And he was really upset and he was screaming and yelling. And at the time I had a boyfriend who is now my husband. And my brother was so angry, and we were in public. He was so angry at whatever the situation was, but it wasn't anything that my boyfriend had done, that my boyfriend goes up to say something to him, and he legitimately was like, I'll fucking whip your ass. And my boyfriend looks at him and says, well, then fucking do it. And they go walking off together. And I'm sitting there like, my boyfriend's going to die, because my brother is a big guy. And they come back like maybe 10 minutes later, and my boyfriend tells me, he's like, he wasn't going to hit me, but he's frustrated because of all these things, and he needed somebody to just listen to him. And it was like, if my brother would have punched my boyfriend, my husband, but my boyfriend at the time, my boyfriend would have been like,
Dad would have died.
No, well, maybe. But after he died and came back, he wouldn't have held it against him, right? They would have scuffled, they would have fought, they would have argued, and then they would have been like, sorry, bro, and hugged it out. Honest to God, that's what a lot of people did. So that's kind of what I view happened, right? But because the cops were called, the cops basically said, listen, you got to go. Charles, get off the property. We're going to escort you off the property. You need to leave. We have a domestic disturbance. This was before the times when they would have to arrest, certain states. In our state,
in Washington.
Somebody has to go to jail in Washington, but this is Texas, so I don't know what they do, but basically they escorted him off the property and said, get out of here, goodbye. However, Charles returns back to the home in the early morning hours, basically about 3 hours later, and he has a gun with him this time. And Charles kicks in the front door, which leads to a confrontation between Glenda, Darren, and Charles. And Charles then shoots Darren 4 times. He shoots him in the chest and the neck, and he dies almost immediately. What I saw, though, in a different report was that he shot him twice in the chest, in the chest. And Darren turned to run, and then he shot him in the back, and Darren fell, and then Charles grabbed him and executed him in the head. Now, that was a different report that I read, so I'm giving him both. So he dies. Then he reloads his weapon. He looks at Glenda, grabs her, puts her in a chokehold, bends her down so that she's looking over Darren, and she's like, he said, I can shoot you too, bitch. And he shoots her 1 time in the face through the cheek. Now, the bullet enters through her cheek, and it causes massive internal damages inside of her mouth, including destroying her dentures, and it almost completely severs her tongue. The bullet does. However, Glenda does not die immediately. She survives the shooting, and she is life flighted to the hospital. Now, she undergoes emergency surgery, but ends up being taken off life support about a week later, and she dies. After the shooting, Charles gets rid of the weapon in a nearby creek, and then he goes to his friend's home, and he describes to her in detail what he just did. And then he ends up contacting his father as well, tells his father what he did, and his father actually helps him surrender to the police. So there's no massive search. He turns himself in. In 1999, Charles goes to trial for the murder of Glenda and Darren, and they are charging him with capital murder. Because if you can charge capital murder, you can put the death penalty on the table. Now, the only thing is, for them to give him the death penalty, the prosecution would have to show and prove that Charles would be dangerous in the future. So the way that their law works is you can't just say, oh, you get the death penalty. They had to show and prove that he would be a danger in the future to other people. Now, they bring evidence of a murder for hire plot that Charles had initiated while he was in prison. So he had basically approached two inmates, Reed and Humphrey, and he was trying to arrange for them to find somebody to murder Diane Zernia. Now, Diane is the friend that he went to visit after he murdered Glenda and Darren and told her in detail everything that happened. She was the only witness that could have or would have been capable of linking him to the murders. So if she was dead, there wouldn't be anybody. Reed ends up tipping off the police. They set up a sting, and investigator Gary Johnson poses as a hitman. He meets with Charles at a visiting booth in the prison. And Charles basically offers him $1,500 to take the murder weapon from the creek and go and kill Diane. Charles also shows him a map that he drew. So he's like holds the map up in the glass because there's glass between. Holds up the map. It's a hand-drawn map that shows where Diana lives and where the gun is at the creek that he dropped it. Gary basically is asking him, like, you know, not why necessarily, but he's basically trying to find out information. And Charles's whole point is she's the only witness they have. And if there's no witness, there's no murder charge. Right. He also gives details and descriptions of her family, their vehicles, what vehicles to hit, what to do. And Gary's like, yeah, okay, I'll do it for $1,500. Cool. So that's what they're using that as evidence that he would be a danger in the future, right? They're trying to say, like, no, this wasn't just like, oh, I killed two people. Like, he actually set up to try to kill one of the witnesses and paid somebody. And had we not been tipped off, he would have succeeded. Now, the defense tries to make claims about Glenda's death specifically. And what they're saying is that she initially survived the shooting and that she died not because of the shooting, but because of complications from the hospital. And that they even brought in an expert witness named Pat Radlett. Now, it was said that Glenda didn't actually die from the gunshot, but by medical negligence. That's what Pat was saying. They claimed that due to extreme swelling of her tongue was one of the complications they had when they were trying to do the emergency surgery. And they did not correctly place I'm going to say this wrong, but you might actually know what it is. Nastroachial tube. I'm assuming it goes through your nose.
Nasotracheal. I'd have to see the word.
I guarantee that's right. What is it?
Nasotracheal tube.
Okay. So they had incorrectly placed a nasotracheal tube. They also failed to monitor her breathing, which led to her falling into coma, which even though you don't work on people, monitoring the breathing is very important when they're under anesthesia and stuff. Mm-hmm. And they said that she went into coma due to bradycardia. See, I knew you would know these.
A slow heart rate.
Okay. See, she is not a medical expert, but she's in
vet med.
She's in vet med, so some of the things apply the same way. I'm a
surgery trained nurse.
Yeah, so we're just I let her take care of the medical shit. Anyways, so Charles also argued that Glenda's family was actually the one who chose to take her off life support. Therefore, he shouldn't be culpable for her murder. Like, she wouldn't have been there because of him. Now, the prosecution had testimony from the medical examiner to explain why Glenda's death was due to the shooting. They also end up getting Pat, the expert witness for the defense, to admit that Glenda probably would have died from the gunshot if she had not received medical help anyways. So the jury takes all this information. They end up finding Charles guilty and they sentence him to death April 14th, 1999. Now, in 2005, there is a retrial for his sentence. They were looking to reestablish the fact that he would be a danger in the future, which I don't understand that because they've already established it, right?
Right.
And so when they go to reestablish, they can't use the same people. They can't use the same example. But I'm sitting there going, but he literally killed two people and then hired somebody to kill another person. Okay. So it was argued that Charles' crime was a crime of revenge, hatred, and spite. So this is what the prosecuting was saying. They're saying, he was doing this for revenge, hatred, and spite. They end up calling in a different witness named Robin Rhodes. Now, Robin testifies that while he was being detained in 1998, he was being detained with Charles. And he says that Charles had actually gave him a paper with a list on it and said, hey, can you please take care of these people? Obviously, there's more of these conversations. It's not like he just walked up and was like, hey, guy.
Right.
Obviously, they were talking. And he shows him this list and he's like, hey, I need somebody to take care of these people. And it's basically a hit list of potential witnesses for his trial. And on this list, it is said that it contained the names of Diane, the one that he tried to kill already, but this was in 1998, which I don't know if this guy came first or the other two inmates came first. I don't know which ones he approached first about it. He gives him this and it has other people on it. Now, next to the people's names, it would say like, kill them or persuade them not to show up. So he had these list of people that were going to help put his ass in jail in 98. And he was like, kill that person, make sure they don't show up, right? That's what his thing was. And he's asking this guy. Now, this guy, Robin, says, I wasn't working, nobody in the police department told me to go and talk to this guy. Like he was literally, I was being detained with him. So we were just bullshitting. And this is what it comes out with. Now, the defense claims, well, no. See, you've got it backwards. Charles' crime wasn't that of revenge, hatred, and spite. It's a crime of passion, which I'm not an expert here, but I feel like my knowledge of crime of passion is not a gunshot to the face. Normally, crimes of passion are like crazy amounts of stabbing or more personal. Shooting somebody's not very personal most of the time. So
especially through the fucking cheek.
Right. So I'm not really sure I agree with that. But they also challenge the credibility of Robin Rhodes. It is revealed in this court that Robin is actually a full-time informant for the local police department. And he had actually worked on 50 cases with the law enforcement. He even had testified in 1999 against his own fiance in a drug trial. So he is like an actual just informant. They're trying to get Robin's testimony basically thrown out because I think they're trying to hint at like, oh, he was put there, he could have coerced or whatever, trying to get him to be like, no, I think they were trying to basically point out that like the shit he's saying you can't necessarily trust because he's an informant. So he'll say things to try to get lighter sentences or whatever. I think that's what their whole point of it was. However, they allow the trial to continue and they allow Robin to be kept as a witness as well. So the new jury now, they go and deliberate and because this was a retrial for just his sentence, basically trying to get the death sentence taken away. And the new jury sentences Charles to death again. Now, following his second death sentence, Charles was held in the Harris County Jail while he's waiting to be transferred to his new place in Texas. On November 3rd of 2005, he escapes from jail.
What the fuck?
I told you, it turned out to be a good one. So he smuggles in several items into his cell, and he smuggled them in by using his legal document folder. All the inmates are allowed to keep their legal document folders with them at all times because it's their legal representation. It's all the shit that they have to, fight against or whatever. So using that folder, he snuck into his cell, handcuff key, a fake ID badge, a set of civilian clothes. I don't know how.
How big is this folder?
That's what I'm saying. Because
I was thinking like a manila envelope.
No, ma'am, it gets worse. He snuck in khakis, a dark blue t-shirt, and white tennis shoes. Now, you're telling me that he was able to put tennis shoes into this folder? Or were y'all just not paying attention? Because I'm thinking y'all weren't paying attention. I'm thinking that those shoes were probably in his fucking jumpsuit, his prison jumpsuit, and y'all didn't search him properly. That's what I'm thinking is going on. Because how do you fucking put all that shit in these folders?
Source.
Yeah, or you had somebody in there that was handing him this shit. So he was taken later that day. That day, he was taken to a visitor room at the prison or at the jail facility because he had said like, oh, I have a meeting with my lawyer. Now in jail, when you meet with your lawyer, you go to rooms because they're not allowed to sit there and watch you talk to your lawyer. It's confidentiality, right? So they typically bring you in. You're handcuffed and all the shit. They bring you in. They put you in a room. They leave you in the room. You talk to your visitors and then you move on. Whereas sometimes you'll see in even movies like they have big areas where people visit. That's not where you're meeting with your lawyer ever. You're meeting with your lawyer privately. So he goes into this room. They leave him in there. He's there. They shut the door. As soon as they shut the door, he uncuffs his hands because he has a handcuff key, uncuffs his hands, changes out of his prison jumpsuit, puts on the clothes, puts on the fake badge, which the fake badge showed that he was a state investigator. And he walks to the exit of the door, opens the door, walks down the hallway to the exit of this area, flashes the badge, they let him out. He has to walk out 4 different doors that are badged in and out. Like, not badged, but that they have to unlock the door for him to leave, where he has to show his badge 4 times. They all let him leave. And he ends up walking out and goes right onto the streets. I'm going to say this.
One hell of a disguise.
I'm going to say this. Here's the part of this that I don't understand.
You know, they just didn't give a fuck.
That's what I was going to say, because here's why. The guy that opened the door for you to come out, he didn't see you go in. And also, you were just wearing different clothes. Like, you were literally just you weren't wearing a wig. You weren't wearing a fake mustache. You were just wearing different clothes. And they just saw you get brought in, and then all of a sudden you're walking through with a badge. Well, did you see that man with the badge come in? No, probably not. So wouldn't that have been a red flag? Like, wait a minute now, who's this guy? Oh, he kind of looks like the inmate that was just brought in here not too long ago. So when I see these kind of things, I'm like, this is negligent. That is negligence on the fucking facility. That is corrections officers not doing their job properly. And by the way, most escapes, it is for that reason. I've seen other ones too, where they walk out and it's like, well, we thought he was you thought wrong, bitch. Like, you thought wrong. Do better. If you're a corrections officer, do better. Your literal job is to keep people safe. If Charles would have succeeded in staying away, where do you think the first place he would have gone? He would have gone to fucking Diane's house and killed her. And then he'd be out of jail because they would think, then his case would be dropped. Then they'd have to try to form a case against him for killing Diane. But by that time, who the fuck knows where he would have been? So you just let the whole entire state of Texas be on like high fucking alert because you let this guy go. Mm-hmm. And it triggered a massive search because again, he's literally taken out 2 hits on this woman. And people were like, oh, okay, this shit's not good. So he hops on a freight train to East Texas and he literally stays in like a boxcar and he ends up making it all the way to Shreveport, Louisiana. And they do end up catching him after 3 days. So they do this nationwide manhunt. 3 days later, they do catch him. And here's why. I firmly believe this is why. They catch him drunk. I think if he wouldn't have been drinking, I don't think it would have been a problem. They catch him drunk and he's at a payphone trying to contact a friend overseas to get them to help him get a plane ticket to get out of the country. So that's where the fuck he was going. But they find him. So then he is immediately extradited to Texas after that because it's like, hold the fuck on. We're not keeping you in a county jail because you escaped.
Right.
He ends up appealing his sentence in 2008, 2013, 2016, 2019, 2021. So he puts in appeals all these different times. And every time they are denied. Charles ends up exhausting all of his appeals. And on January 28th of 2026, Charles is put to death by lethal injection. This story, Sierra, is the one that you sent me literally a couple weeks ago because he had just been put to death he was the first death in Texas of 2026. And you had sent me, so you sent me that. And then right after that, you sent me the Lane Bryant murders. So he was the second to the last thing you sent me. That's who this guy is. So his final statement was, I would like to say that I hope the victim's family, their extended family, and their loved ones can find forgiveness in their heart and that you can begin to heal and move past this. There are no winners in this situation. It creates more victims and traumatizes more people 28 years later. I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry for what happened. And I want to tell all of you, I love you and that keep Jesus in your life. Keep Jesus first. To my children, get to know the Lord. I love you all. That's it, Warden. So that's what he says. Now, I am going to say something about that. They were talking about he had never, until this statement, he had always denied killing them. He had never admitted to it, and he never took accountability for it until this statement. And in the beginning with Darren, he actually tried to claim that the gun accidentally went off when they were fighting. However, the forensics of it did not prove that that could have been possible. Now, his final meal was, he got 2 final meals because he was put to death in the evening. So his breakfast final meal was scrambled eggs, grape jelly, oatmeal, applesauce, and biscuits. And his dinner was fried chicken, pinto beans, sweet potatoes, carrots, sliced bread, swirl pudding, and punch. As always, I have a thought. I'm going to tell you. The people, I'm going to try to say this because I'm not here to offend anybody. I know, I can guarantee you that he has family that still cares about him and loves him, right? I'm sure his children love him, and I'm sure his father loves him, and I'm sure his brother loves him. So I'm not saying anything other than this. When I saw the letter that he wrote, before I did any of my research, I sat there and I was like, okay, this is interesting, because in his letter, he talks about responsibility. He accepts responsibility. He talks about how it's a crime of passion. He talks about how he was addicted to drugs and how he, again, says, I didn't receive any help like I should have, which I agree. But he took responsibility. And that's one of my biggest things is if you can't take responsibility and take accountability for your actions, don't fucking come at me with it. I do agree. I think the jail system fails. I think the juvie system failed him. I totally do. And he talks about that, but he doesn't put all the blame on. He doesn't say like, oh, if it wasn't for me, he doesn't say that, but he says, I understand now that the juvie system failed me. The jail system has failed me. He goes, but I also understand that I did this. And he does say it was a crime of passion. So going into this, I was like, well, it's interesting that people, I don't typically see people get the death penalty for a crime of passion, because a lot of the times crime of passions aren't something that would be considered like a capital murder offense, because a lot of the times it's spur of the moment, very quick. It's not pre-planned. Right. So it's not and so I was very like, that's weird. But see, you lost me when you tried to kill the witness twice. And that's where I struggled in this, because it was like, okay, I saw what he specifically said, but your actions say different. You literally tried to kill the main witness twice, specifically because you said no witness, no case. You
had a fucking hit list.
Right. And you also escaped from prison. So that doesn't show me the actions of somebody who's taking responsibility and accountability. If you wanted to stay in jail for life, right, for the murder, then you wouldn't have put a hit list out. You would have just accepted the consequences of your actions. That's what my problem is. So I am, and I really do, and I do want to say this, and I'm gonna follow it up with something. So I do firmly believe there is a very good chance that the day that Glenda and Darren were killed, I would venture to guess there's a really high possibility that he was either high, drunk, or both.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I do not excuse that. I do not say like, he shouldn't be held accountable. No, you should be. However, for the very majority, actually, of my research, I was like, it sucks that he has a death penalty for something that he probably did when he wasn't in a right frame of mind. Not psychotic, but like took something that made him liquid courage, as one would say,
yeah,
right?
I don't know. There's a part of me that wonders if there's a little part of him that maybe somewhere deep down really was a killer at the end of the day, because...
could be. I'm not saying that.
Of the fact, and I know it was after, but because of the fact that he was so willingly able to want to have the witness killed.
So that's what
have a whole other list of people.
That's what I was going to say is, so for a while I was like, this might have been one of those drug-induced or alcohol, type of things. But you were not drunk and you were not high as fuck when you enlisted 2 different times for Diane to be killed.
Right.
So that is where you lose me. Right? That is where you make me sit there and go, okay, but I understand trying to protect yourself at all costs. But like, if you would have just honestly come out and been like, yeah, I fucking killed them. I don't know why I did it. I was crazy. I loved her, whatever. You probably could have gotten a plea deal and you would probably not even be in jail for the rest of your life. You probably would have gotten like 25 years.
Right.
but you chose to lie and fight it. But instead of fighting it, you tried to kill the witness that would put you in jail and keep you, and that you knew that if she spoke, you're going to get the death penalty. I guarantee you, your defense attorneys were like, listen, they have a witness that she like knows details that
they
only
probably
you would
straight
know,
up
right?
told him, and then he was
absolutely
like, oh, gotta take care of that.
So I will say this. I think this is I agree with actually what he said in his statement, though. This was a terrible situation. I am happy that he apologized because, again, he had never done that before. So I guess that's good. But he's not wrong that when you put somebody to death, you are also creating more victims because now his family is going to mourn him, right? So I understand that concept. I do. But I have a hard time being like, yeah, he shouldn't have had the death penalty because, like, bro, you had every opportunity. If you would have not tried to kill the witness, you would not have been put on death. You would not have been able to be put on. There was nothing that they could have done to use against you for capital punishment. And if it's a crime of passion, that's not normally a capital punishment offense.
Right.
So that tells me there's a little bit of missing information that probably nobody knows. And like you said, maybe he just had killer tendencies that would come out in certain ways. I don't know. But I definitely would say that I agree with him that nobody really wins in this scenario because even though he is no longer here, it might put closure into the family members of the victims. But now you have a whole slew of victims now that have been created with this. And how do they get closure?
Well, no. There's part of me that kind of is stuck on I think at the end of the day, he had killer tendencies, which I know he abused drugs and alcohol, but having the son also say that he was an abusive guy.
Well, and that was the other thing.
That's the one thing that I also keep remembering is like,
yes.
okay, well, it's not like this was just a spur of the moment abuse and
yeah,
it turned
as a matter
into murder.
of fact,
there's, granted, we don't have like reports, but the son claims.
Well, and the son is an adult,
right? But I'm saying he claims
he
that
said
shit
after because they went and witnessed the execution.
Right.
After the execution, he said he's in hell. So that's totally a viable answer because if somebody kills my family member, that's exactly where I think you're going. But I'm saying
if somebody kills my family member, I want to be the one to make sure that I put you to death.
Right.
I'm not
real.
even.
No, you're not wrong.
And I
you're
know that's
wrong.
probably morbid, and people are probably going to say that I'm a psychopath. But seriously, like you put my family to death, I want to make sure that I can put you to your death. Well,
and here, this is again. I'm going to leave it with this. This is something that I read after he was executed. Again, the son had given like kind of a small interview, and he had said, I remember when they came to my school and told me that my mom had been murdered. And he said they came in, they pulled me out of class, and they basically said there has been a shooting. And he said my response to them was, it was Chuck, wasn't it? Which is Charlie. Mm-hmm. And he said because he was abusive, and there were many.
And the fact that he already had that, like,
so to me, I'm like, okay.
And again, I know there's drugs and alcohol.
Well,
but I feel
exactly.
Like,
there's drugs and alcohol involved, which again is always a thing. Never going to be an excuse,
like
but
we just said.
And again, this is why I say we don't excuse bad behavior for mental health, drugs, whatever. Because
well, who knows the people he was hanging out with in the juvie system?
Well, and I'm not saying that he should have been let out of prison.
No.
I am saying that if he would have taken accountability up front, he would probably not have been put to death. And if he wouldn't have tried to kill his witnesses, he probably wouldn't have been put to death. He would have been given a life sentence at the minimum. That is the story of Charles Victor Thompson. I told you it was a good one. It's not like good like that, but I mean, I got information on his background. I think the prison escape was crazy. that's some crazy talk. Yeah, I told you this is a good one. I was pleasantly surprised at the information I was able to find, and yeah, I mean, you can make your own judgments. I don't judge you for the judgments you make. I know there's a lot of people that are pro death penalty, and there's a lot that are not death penalty. And if I have to decide, do I think he deserved death penalty or not? That's a tough one because, like I said, if you would have asked me before I found out that he had tried to kill the witnesses twice, I would say no. But after finding out that he had a hit list and he was trying to engage hitmen to kill people, if that's the sentence
we all know
you
how
give,
I feel.
Yeah,
for the most
Sierra
part, I don't
always,
have an issue with the
Sierra's
death penalty.
pro death penalty, and that's fine. But to me, if you're gonna, I think it was I'll say this: I think it was a justifiable ending. That's why I think it was justified that they could come up with the death penalty as an option.
Yeah.
Anyways, if you like the stuff that you hear, if you like what we're talking about and all the true crime shenanigans that we discuss, please make sure you're following us. And if you know anybody that you think might like to listen to us because they're also true crime lovers, share us with them. Other than that, I want to thank you one more time for listening to us talk to you about Charles Victor Thompson, the man who claims he murdered in passion but tried to hire a hitman to get out of it. Until next week, catch you on the flip side, bitches.
Bye, bitches.